description. Sorry, not in the description. In the chat. Hello, everyone. Lovely people. So we are back and we are doing Beowulf, and I am now in the unenviable position of awkwardly not remembering where we left off last. I know we were halfway through chapter 2, and I remember that we were at the point where they stopped talking about Heorot, and then next they were going to start talking about Grendel. That's the one. Yes, this is the one. Where they start talking about Grendel and everything. So give it a minute. We'll let a couple of people join. How is everyone doing this morning? Is the audio okay? Am I hearable and all that lot? Doop de doop. Need to close down some of these numerous windows. Do not save. Awesome. Oh, and the music, which I'm going to be playing in the background, which as usual, please let me know if it's bothersome or if it's too loud. This is a musical project called Chaucerian Myth, and it is run by a good friend of mine. So, and I'm using it with his permission. So, do please go and check it out. You know, support the artist. Give him some views on his Bandcamp, etc. Really cool guy. And give it 1 more minute to let more people come in, because I don't want to be like starting off with a verse and then you suddenly get like 5 people coming in and they miss the first awesome verse or what have you. Actually, in the meantime, while we wait for people to come in, instead of Beowulf, I can go through this Latin poem about the femboy lawyer, because this is extremely fun and this will excite me and get me in the mood by talking about queer shit. Right, so I translated this word glyconeum as like soybean style because it literally does relate. So the word glykis or something in Greek apparently is actually the same root as the Greek word for soybean. So I'm like, this is a soy boy poem, I've decided. And it refers, so glyconeum refers to like a style of poetry. Because this poet Luxorius is really skilled. He does lots of different things. In advocatum effeminatum, against a lawyer who is quite effeminate. So I'm translating this as femboy because it's fun. So I will read it. Forgive me if I pronounce any things really poorly. Execti species viri nature grave dedecus, us femineo patens ferre cura libidnis, cum sis orde facundior cur causa steriles agis, aut corrupta negotia et perdenda magis locas. Ag novi ut video, tuo orde quid bene credier, non vis, sed puro podici. So that is an extremely fun one, and I need to start recording as well, so oops, oof magoof. So what this poem means, species execti viri, and you might notice he does this Luxorius in other places as well, cura fere libidnis. He does a nominative sandwich between 2 genitives. It's quite cool. What this means is, so there's an implied you are here because we've got the verb cease here, which is you are. So this doesn't mean a species. It's like sort of like you are the species. Because in Latin, when you have a noun and you don't have a verb that goes with it, usually you assume to be. So you are the species of a sort of chopped off man, decadent of serious nature, which is quite dramatic. Patens, lying exposed, lying vulnerable, usu femineo. Now this is I believe this is sort of evoking Leviticus, which is interesting because Luxorius is actually a very pagan poet. I think some scholars have questioned whether he was pagan, and he certainly makes few, if any, references to religion or to Christianity in his thing. It's just that this phrasing usus femineus, it shows up in Leviticus in the Vulgate translation of the Leviticus passage against homosexuality. Man shall not lie with man. It's that thing. They describe that as like a man doing usus feminine, like feminine usage, feminine behavior. It's quite it's difficult to translate this passage. And then a bit like Old English poetry, sometimes they'll just have couplets almost, or little phrases where they repeat it. They repeat themselves. They have fere cur libidinis, the burden of a savage libido, of a savage sex drive. So we have essentially we have three different things that, oh, four different things really, that Luxorius is describing this lawyer as being. And then he addresses the lawyer directly. Cum sis orde facundior curs causas steriles agis. Since you are more skilled with your mouth, why do you do useless things? Now, this line is really interesting. It's sort of it cuts to the core of Greco-Roman the Greco-Roman intersection of sexuality and masculinity, because the title, which is in the manuscript, this is not a later edition, is against an effeminate lawyer. And what he's saying is that when you've got oratory skill, so why are you doing sterile things? Why are you essentially being gay or being effeminate? Because correct masculine performance to the Greeks and Romans is using one's mouth for public oratory, not for, you know what I mean? So those are the sterile arguments, the corrupta negotia, the corrupt dealings, and things which are to be destroyed or scorned. He says, why do you arrange those kinds of dealings instead? And then he says, agnovi, I figured it out. Ut video, tuo ori, non vis, sed puro bodici. Sorry, ut video tuo ori quid, non vis, sed puro bodici. Right, so it's like, I figured it out because I see you do not want that which is in your to be in your mouth, but rather you want it in your puro podici, in your clean asshole. Extremely fun. And he throws in these two lines at the two words in bene credier. Take my word for it, guys. This dude's a sissy. This dude likes taking it in the ass. It's an amazingly fun poem. They never do this in Latin school. God damn it, I need to set up my own Latin school so I can teach this stuff, and you all can be free. But now we should have more people in chat. Welcome, everyone. We've got 5 viewers now. Awesome. So, having done all of that, let's actually get on to Beowulf now that we've had some time for people to come in. And we are on chapter 2, lines 86 to 90a. That reminds me also that I need to set up my phone so that I can actually see people's chat and questions as we go along. So while I set that up on my phone, last week we were hearing about this great hall, which I believe Halfdane had ordered to be built, and this is the Hall of Heorot, and it's the best of all the halls. It's really impressive, etc. And they're talking about how beautiful it is, but how we also talked about how the hall is somewhat aware of what's going to come. It's almost sentient because of these. It's maybe standing in for like a pagan deity in some ways. It's maybe borrowing these ideas of heaven being like a domicile that we talked about last week. You can go and look at that video if you want to hear me rant about that. But now we are on, and if somebody recognizes that we've already done this last week, I'm very sorry to have repeated it. We go from the hall and the glory of the hall, which is awaiting the edgeheta, the hatred which causes divisions and boundaries between people, and then we get to that. So like they mention that there's boundaries between people, and the hall is aware that some kind of enmity that will create boundaries between people is going to be coming up, and then they're like, right. I remember that we've, as a whole society, we have cast people out and created boundaries. And so the poet almost remembers, oh shit, that's going to have some effects. Who are those people who we've cut out? What's happened to them? And then the poet goes to it. So, also, welcome Modi and Andy. Pleasure to have you guys. So, as usual with this, at this point in the video, feel free to pause and have a go at translating it yourself. And while I'm reading it out and while I'm translating it, if you guys want to guess at what any of these clauses or sentences mean, feel free to. As usual, we have the vocabulary in this box on the side. Every single word will be in the vocabulary box here, and the case system is explained below. So hopefully that can help you guys follow along. So let us read. Dha se Ellengast erforlítje dragi dholade, se thein dustrum bad, that he dogra je hwam dream je hirde hludne in heale. Daar was herpan sway, swootol sang shoppes. So then the mighty or powerful spirit. Just a small note actually about this this bit, Ellengast. So Gast is somewhat more neutral actually. You know, Gast is like the Holy Spirit. It's just the word for like spirit, base or ghost. It's where we get our English word ghost. And this word Ellen is actually really interesting. Because it's referring to Grendel. It's not referring to a good person. This is a monster who is Ellen, who is noble. And actually, if we go all the way back to the start of the poem, look, we see this word again. What way garden and yeardagum failed king at Rumiflunon, who the Athelingas Ellen Flemidon. Let us hear how the princes performed a noble deed. And this is really interesting to think about. There's one of two ways that you can read this. You can read the fact that Grendel is being described in the same way as almost equating it. Like Grendel is not intrinsically bad. He's just the person who happens to have lost the fight and therefore happens to be on the other side. But the things he does to wind up on the outside of the whole society are understandable. It's like how this is going to sound like a weird thing to think about. Also, I'm going to like play this for some nice music in the background. If it's too loud, please let me know, or if the music is distracting, please let me know. But it's like how it's going to sound super weird, but I quite like watching this North Korean cartoon for which there's an English dub version of many series of it on YouTube. It's called Squirrel and Hedgehog, and it started off in like the 1970s in Pyongyang, being broadcast in Pyongyang, and it seems to be quite like a popular cartoon in North Korea. What's really interesting about it is you get a window into their sort of propaganda and thinking through the cartoon. But what's really fascinating about it is that there's no sense of the enemy being wrong because the enemy does bad things. Because everything the enemy does in that cartoon, the good guys also do, and it's framed as heroic when they do it. So heroism in Squirrel and Hedgehog is framed as a matter literally of what side you're on. In Squirrel and Hedgehog, I need to close the window. In Squirrel and Hedgehog, it's framed as literally a matter of which species you are, because it's a whole racial analogy. It's a whole racial analogy in Squirrel and Hedgehog, and where the squirrels and such are the North Koreans, and the weasels are like South Koreans. And I wonder if there's a similar thing going on here, where I don't know, where Grendel is being framed as outcast in the hall for things that are understandable. Maybe the poet is going, I sort of get why Grendel did what he did, which is a very interesting perspective. And another perspective ties into what we were talking about with the insecurity in Beowulf as a poem of whether the Mead Hall society is stable and durable or not. because by saying that we're going to hear this story about the noble hall, how the princes performed Ellen, like a noble task, and we see that the people who get cast out of that society, who become monstrous, also perform Ellen. They perform sort of great, mighty, noble deeds. Does that mean that Beowulf, Hrothgar, all of these people in the Great Hall Society, are they just as doomed as Grendel? Whether in the spiritual sense of an afterlife, or maybe are they doomed to their society falling apart in the same way that Grendel, I guess, was excised from human society for bearing the mark of Cain? These are just things to consider, basically, when we read this passage. Exactly, yeah, Michael. So Grendel is the son of Cain and was cursed by God. Yeah, so one could therefore read this as saying that although, or rather, one could read this as saying that what distinguishes Beowulf from Grendel is actually ancestry rather than behavior, which is an interesting perspective, especially given that that would fly in the face of a lot of Christian religious beliefs at the time. And I'm going to open the window now that the bird has shut up, just because it will be quite hot in here if I don't. I could have just killed the bird. Anyway, right, so let's go on with this sentence. Now that I've spent so much time rambling about what a single word might mean, I feel like Jordan Peterson, fucking hell. Var se Ellengast for liche thraje ytholade. Then the noble spirit followed it, suffered, endured. This is really hard to translate. I don't think we have a word like this. It's sort of like with much difficulty. For a period of time, thraga. And then this say, because it is a masculine nominative singular, it's referring back to the Ellengast. They can use pronouns in this way to link it up in English. And then this they is just like who. So he who, in Thustrum, in the shadows, bad. This is like bade or like awaited. He who waited in the shadows. That hey, and likewise this hey is masculine nominative singular, so it's referring back to the noble spirit. That hey, dogorda yehwam dream yehirde. That he, in each yehwam of the days, dogorda dream. Now dream is a false friend with modern English. It actually means revelry or mirth or joy, rather than an actual dream. Sweven is the word for dream in Old English, not dream. Yehirde is, you can see the cognate, it's he heard it. So he heard revelry, hludna in hela, loud in the hall. And you can probably, if you think about it, I suppose, hear that some of these syntaxes are familiar with us. So that he, in each of the days, revelry heard loud in the hall. We can sort of see how it's not entirely unfamiliar to us. Thar was herap and sway, swutal sang shopes. There was the sway, the sound, the swaying of a harp, the swutal song, the sweet song of the shopes. Shop is the old Anglo-Saxon word for poet. It's sort of like the Old Norse skald tradition, basically. So this is be like the person who is reading Beowulf, really. And now this Herapansway is quite important because the performance of harp music in the context of a secular noble hall is actually quite important in early Anglo-Saxon society. But not just that, even for religious societies, because monks would replicate this and they would pass around the psalterium, the sort of religious harp, and they would sing their songs to the accompaniment of that. It's only that their songs would be religious in nature, obviously, rather than secular. They wouldn't be singing about the legend of Beowulf, they would be singing about the glory of God or whatever have you. So it's an interesting thing to bear in mind that although monastic communities are actually supposed to be separate from the material world and therefore separate from the heterotemporality, separate from heterosexuality, which predominates in the secular world, including its material trappings like jewelry and weapons and such lot, and these things like the harp, they're still in some ways imitating secular masculine performance. It's almost like monks are forced into performing asexuality, whereas secular Anglo-Saxon lords like Beowulf and Hrothgar perform heterosexuality as part of their noble masculinity. And we'll see that later on, actually. References to sleeping with Wealhtheow are put in there as part of almost like the daily cycle of a king like Hrothgar. And medieval monastics who would have been writing poems like Beowulf, so that's an interesting perspective to bear in mind. The monks who would have been writing down Beowulf have to perform asexuality, even if they're not asexual, even if they're heterosexual or homosexual or bisexual, as we would describe them today. They perform asexuality because sexual attraction is linked to the flesh, which the Christian and monastic project is to destroy. So it's interesting that they still, in some ways, in the monastic societies, replicate some of these behaviors, even though they sort of replicate behaviors which are associated with the heterosexual masculinity in the secular world. They replicate them only asexually, almost, within the monastic context. And maybe this actually explains the interest within monastic circles of a poem like Beowulf, because we have to bear in mind that a poem like Beowulf, which is all about the heroic, masculine, heterosexual world, we don't have asexual monks in Beowulf. There's no religiosity at all in Beowulf. It's a secular poem. So monastic interest in that might come from various ways. It might come from this attempt at like asexual imitation of the kinds of the trappings of secular masculinity, which normally were engaged in by heterosexual people. And once again, I'm going to recommend this book for a really fascinating insight. So this actually doesn't go too much into heroic masculinity and the whole, like in Beowulf and such lot, but it The Third Gender and Alfred's Lives of Saints by Rhonda McDaniel, it goes a lot into how quote-unquote Anglo-Saxon monastics understood their sexuality and, to a large extent, their gender roles as well, and how they intertwined, and how they're related to the secular world. Ignore me. Of course, I have to throw in some queer theory in, like, literally everything. It's my brand at this point. Oh, dear. Anyway, we don't have the key, but we will survive. Hey, Jack, don't worry. Being a bit late. It'll all be recorded in case you miss anything. But Jack, for your benefit, because you came late, I'll quickly run through this one more time. Tha se Ellengast for the liedje draie de jethode, say the in dustrum bad, that he doger je hwam, dream gehirde, ludne in hele, daar was herapan sway, sweetal sang shoppes. Then the noble spirit endured for a long time with difficulty, he who awaited in the shadows, so that he heard revelry on each of the days loudly in the hall. There, in the hall, there was the plucking of a harp, the sweet song of a poet, of a shop. So they've gone from the previous lines, which are talking about how great the hall is, to they're sort of putting us in almost in Grendel's perspective. They're like, this is what's happening in the hall. Grendel does not like it, is what these lines are saying. And then this bit I find really interesting because it's very goody two shoes, and it's we'll talk about this. But before I translate it, I'll pause for a second. Anyone who wants to have a go at translating this before I give my translation of it using the vocabulary on the side, feel free to pause this video and take a screenshot and have a go at translating it on your own. I'm going to have a sip of my energy drink. It's very appropriate that we're talking about Beowulf, a poem all about monsters, and I'm drinking Monster. I'm not sponsored, but if you're watching someone from Monster, please sponsor me. I will do anything. I won't. But... Right. So, line 90b. Saide se the kuthe frum shaft fira verden rechan. Quat that se almächtiga erden workte lite bergne wang. Swa watel bebugeth. Je sette sie reithi sunan und monan leoman to leochte landbuendum on je fratwade foldan sheatas leomum on leafum. Lief je sheop kunna je hulchum varda de gwitje hulfath. Oh, it's just oh man, this clause. Je sette sie reithi sunan und monan leoman to leochte landbuendum. Oh, that sounds so fucking good. Anyway, so in the last verse they said the sweet song of the poet, and this is what the poet is singing about, and it's so interesting because this is about as Christian as Beowulf as a poem is going to get. It says, he who knew how to tell the Frumschaft, the creation of men, from this, literally Feoran is from far away, but it means from a long time ago. So the ancient history of men, basically, he spoke about it. He said, quath, or he quoted, that se allmächtiga erden workte, that the Almighty created the earth. Now, in some previous verses, I've said something to the effect of, with the Gardsage or something, that this could be a stand-in or a Flodesacht as well. I said the Flodesacht might be some kind of stand-in for a pagan deity. There's none of that here. Allmächtiga, to my knowledge, at least in the Norse mythology, there is no god who is like almighty. There is no Pantokrator or omnipotens, as we would say from the Greek and the Latin. This is the Christian God, no doubt about it, who created the earth. It's also very interesting that poets elsewhere in Beowulf, they tell stories of secular deeds and noble people. It's interesting that when it comes to telling of the creation of the earth, that the Beowulf poet is makes recourse to Christianity. I think it's David Gellner is an anthropologist who studies Indian religion, and he writes about how in South Asia in the present day there's what he describes really awesomely, because he lectured and he taught me. He described it as a division of labor, and the way he said it is you have Buddhist funeral services, but you never have a Buddhist wedding ceremonies or something like this. So people in India, they might go to a Buddhist temple for a funeral, but they might go to a Jainist temple for a wedding or something like this. So different religions are doing different kinds of jobs for the society. And Beowulf has a poem that's sort of caught between, as we talked about in the first video, Beowulf is a poem which is caught between paganism and Christianity. In this case, it might be that for the Beowulf poet, the pagan side just doesn't think or talk about the origins of the world. That's not a thing that's important to them. It's very important to medieval Christians, in part because, as we see in the Venerable Bede's book, De Temporum Ratione, on the Reckoning of Time, arguments about precisely, like down to the last minute, how and when the world was created. They really matter for calculating important religious dates like the celebration of Easter or when Christ was crucified, etc. Really important things are calculated by reference to the beginning of the world and the Genesis account. And also that's part of it also is because in the Genesis account is where you have the fall and original sin, which are so much more influential for humankind. Whereas, to my knowledge, now we don't have a surviving mythology of the pagan Anglo-Saxons in the way that we do for the Old Norse. But if we take the Old Norse as an analogy of what their mythology might have been like, of what the Anglo-Saxons' mythology would have been similar to, because they would have had similar deities with similar functions and a similar mythos. We know that some of the heroic figures and legends like Wayland are shared with the Anglo-Saxons and the Old Norse. So if we take that and assume that the Norse mythology would have been similar to the Anglo-Saxon mythology, suddenly we can, we can see that in the Norse mythology, the creation of the world is not all that important from what I understand and from what I've read of it. I'm not an expert on Old Norse, so do not at me about this. I'm sure the Norse had an explanation for how the world came to be, but it's not something that's hugely important for their day-to-day religiosity. Whereas for the Christians, it really is, because the whole deal, the whole reason Christ has to die for our sins is because of the events that happened in Genesis in the Christian account. So it's super important. So it may have been that the Beowulf poet was in two religions, was in a world of two religions, one that was on the rise, Christianity, and the other that was on the decline, that was paganism. And the pagans maybe just didn't talk much about the beginning of the world. It wasn't something that mattered to them. It does matter to the Christians, so he brings it in. But it's weird. It's very weird that he brings it in, and I will talk about why it's weird after I translate a bit more of this, rather than me rambling on for so long about the implications of all this mythology. I am so sorry, guys. And if at any point I'm rambling too much and you guys want me to just carry on translating, please tell me. So, Wlite Beach na Wang. This word is also very interesting. Beach. So this is referring to the Garden of Eden, the Wlite Beach na Wang. And Vliet is sort of the word for face, actually, but it's also a word for fair. And then Berchne is bright, so it's almost like as bright as someone's face, which is a fascinating way to describe the garden. And I believe maybe it's a reference to in Genesis, get away from and see my face no more, for in the day thou see my face thou shalt die, this kind of thing. Anyway, so thus the water surrounds, and there is no red word in the this clause here, these three words. So we assume that it's surrounding the Willeberg na Wang. So the Lord created the Garden of Eden, which is surrounded by water, by a moat. And Se Almechtiga, this is referring back to the Lord. It's not referring, the water is not the person who is doing this Sierrethi. The reason we know this is because it is Sierrethi, first of all, it's masculine, like Se Almechtiga, and Water is neuter gender, but also because, Sierrethi means victorious one, victorious. And what's the word? It's this is, water is not victorious for the most part. So by context, we can assume that it means that is referring to God. And also, thank you, Zingatora. I worked for literally 6 months on my voice, so I'm glad that it has paid off. He set so C is actually really interesting. So C is the Old English word for victory, and Hrethi is like glorious. So the victory glorious, in other words, victorious. The victorious Almighty God. He set Yesette Sunan and Monan. No prizes for any of you who managed to guess what Sunan and Monan means. It is the sun and the moon. Leoman to lechte. As lights. the light of the sun and the moon, or the light, sun and moon, táleachta as light, landbúendum, for those dwelling on the land. Und je fratwade faldan sheatas leomum und leafum. So, he decorated je fratwade faldan sheatas, the corners of the earth, with leomum. Leom is like limb, like our modern English word limb, and leafum, and with leaves. Leafum can also mean limb, but it's like the leaves of a tree, basically. It's like our modern word leaf. Yeah, that's interesting that the Old English pronunciation of water is the same as in Broad Yorkshire. That's interesting. So, and God also, leaf Yesheap, he also created life. And then they say of which kind. So these are genitives. Oh wait, hang on. No, I'm wrong. Sorry. Yehwilchum is like for each, and then kuna farda of the races which quiche huirfath, which run around being living. Now, I had a point that I was going to talk about with regards to why this is so goody two shoes, and I'm going to take a sip and then I will do that. Right, so goody two shoes, Beowulf. So what's the deal with this? Why? We have this poem where it's full of monsters and noble heroes and swords and dragons. Why on earth is this shop from the previous verse, this shop? Why is this boring prick singing about how God made the earth, Genesis? Like, we don't want to go to church when we're reading Beowulf. What the hell is this? I talked earlier about how it could just be that the pagans didn't really have a good explanation for the beginning of the world, and therefore the poet substitutes in the Christian explanation because the Christian explanation is more important. I also think this has to do with what I mentioned earlier about monastic imitation in some ways of secular masculine society, which they are precluded from in some ways. One of my most controversial takes within within the discords for like early medieval languages is that I say that monks are, or were, medieval monks were what we would describe as non-binary, because since they are forbidden to engage in sexual reproduction, they cannot fit themselves into the heterosexual roles which most people in medieval society were doing. And these roles are inherently tied to power and such in the physical world. If you read, I mean, Engels is like old, but if you read Engels on the Holy Family and such, in the development of the family, you will see how it's been recognized in scholarship for a long time that the family and the nuclear family and sexual reproduction, with the subjugation of women included in that, sort of provides a means for powerful people to reproduce power. In the same way, so monastics are forbidden from engaging in that because they can't reproduce and they can't have heirs to pass on their property to. But in some ways, monastic society, I should say monastic male society, even though monastic female societies did exist in Anglo-Saxon England, and especially in Bede's time, you had double monasteries where women could even lead men. We hear less about them, but we shouldn't. That's one of the work of feminist scholarships in the field of Anglo-Saxon studies in the recent years, is to pay more attention to the ways in which female leadership in early medieval England has been underplayed by scholars medieval, such as Bede. Bede very much underplays the role of abbots such as Abbot Hild, and also by present-day scholars who have not paid too much attention to what women were doing at the time. But anyway, monastic people, like the people who are writing down Beowulf, are might in some ways be imitating this like secular heterosexual masculinity that they're not allowed to engage in because they can't be heterosexual or they can't perform heterosexuality publicly. And I think this is part of it because we know, and I'll take a break while I'm rambling about this to show you it because it's freaking beautiful. It's MS Junius 11. Oh yes, this is the shit. This is absolutely the shit. Digital Bodleian. This manuscript contains my absolute favorite Old English poem. I'm sorry, guys. I love Beowulf, truly. Like, it's a lot of fun, and it probably does. Beowulf probably tells us more about the early Anglo-Saxon world than these poems do. I acknowledge this, but this happens not to be the particular poem. This is the start of Genesis. But what this is this right here is what the poet is talking about. So this is an Old English poetic retelling of Genesis. You can see the word Genesis up there, although that was added by a later scribe. Us is richt Mitchell, that we rather weird, where the wulderkinning wordem herien. It is really truly right that we praise the protector of the worlds, the people's wonder king with words, with our words. Really fascinating stuff. And the manuscript itself is absolutely beautiful because they have loads of drawings that went with this poetry. Look at that. These are angels. These are like early medieval drawings of angels. You've got Christ sitting there with a sword. And notice that as well. So, this is Christ sitting on the seat of judgment with a sword. This symbol of phallic, honestly, masculine power, which these monks would have been excluded from in some ways. So it's really fascinating to think about all of this. And we have various scenes here of the heavenly life. Simply fascinating, beyond fascinating. And look, you have these cute little cute little captions which tell you what's going on. And this one says, Herse Halland Yeshop Helle Heom Tor Wita, and it's a line from the poem. Here the Lord created heaven as a punishment for them, as a torment for them. And we see Lucifer falling into hell, and art historians have done a great deal about the twisting of the body and what this means for medieval notions of masculinity. And then we see him there, we see the devil like bound in hell. It's just so cool. It's like almost like some BDSM shit, and we see like the angels falling. We see the Latin word infernum, meaning hell. Just so much fun. Also, look, that was the start of an Old English, basically comic book annotation that wasn't finished. But oh boy, this manuscript is so much fun. I'm going to link it in chat for anyone who wants to. MS Junius. This one also just so happens to contain my very favorite Old English poem, which is Christ and Satan. You guys, I stream Beowulf in part because it's more popular and more people care about it, but Jesus, Christ and Satan is fun. It's fucking metal. But if you're not into black metal, you probably won't care that much. Yes, Munger. We also have the Anglo-Saxon poem Heilan, which uses Germanic verse to help Christianize the Saxons. Exactly, yes. So the poems in here are like the old Saxon Heiland. But this is exactly what the Beowulf poet is saying is happening. So the Beowulf poet is saying that the poet in the Great Hall Herod is singing about creation, about Genesis, and we know that monks just like him were writing down and sharing and performing poetry in Old English like this about Genesis, about creation. So I think that this entire passage is almost part of that monastic attempt to imitate secular masculinity, and it's almost like an authorial self-insert. Like the monk maybe writing this down, or the Beowulf poet, it was probably, written down long ago. Sorry, it was probably composed. Beowulf as a poem was composed long ago and then written down. But it would have been, I think it probably would have been composed by a monk. There is more scholarship on this that I have not read, so I may be wrong on this. And if I'm wrong, somebody feel free to point it out to me. But chances are good that a literate monk created or adapted Beowulf into a form similar to what we have today. And I'm talking way too fast. I apologize. I just get excited about this stuff. And so I think what this is it's a monk putting something relatable into Beowulf in this world of straight men going out there performing these noble tasks of violence and killing dragons and getting vast amounts of material wealth, none of which is stuff that, with the exception of killing dragons and demons, none of this is stuff that medieval monks are permitted to do in their society. This is almost a way of putting something relatable in. Because for the monks who are listening to this, it's like, oh yeah, or the monks who are reading this, because only monks probably would have been able to read the written text of Beowulf for most of early medieval English history. They could have been like, oh, these heroic warrior kings are listening to poetry about Genesis just like we do as monks. And I think that's what this line is, the sentence is functioning as within the poem of Beowulf. I think that's the purpose it serves. All of these are taken with a grain of salt. These are very, I guess, flimsy tangential connections I'm drawing between different aspects of early medieval English society, but it's maybe worth considering, bearing in mind as we go through it. So, let us read this, and I will, as usual, pause. You guys can feel free to take a screenshot and translate it on your own if you want to, and I'm going to take a sip. And feel free to ask questions, by the way, as well, while I take a sip. Jack Tier asks, could it be many narrators adding to the story of Beowulf from an oral tradition until it was written down? Yes, that very well could be. And there was an anthropologist who did some research on this, on like how we can tell whether a poem was originally an oral composition or whether it was written down and / or learned from written sources. My honest answer is I don't know. I've not read the scholarship on Beowulf to be able to say. But bear in mind, it's worth bearing in mind, like Jack says, this could be the result of narrators adding to the story of Beowulf. It's entirely possible that Beowulf, in its inception, was more pagan, for instance, and it was Christianized later, or vice versa even, which is less likely, but still. So let us read. Swa dha drich guman dreamum lifton eadiliche, of that ongan firne fremman found on hella. So let's do the first clause first. Thus the retainers lived in revelries happily. Of that until now this on goes back to the found, and the word on is sort of where we get our modern English word a or an, and it's functioning here actually sort of like that because this is also functioning as a numeral. It's functioning as the word one, but the reason it's here is to call attention to the uniqueness of it. So one enemy began. So out of all of the enemies, all of the descendants of Cain who are going around causing trouble, a single one is being difficult, and that single one is Grendel. Unfound ongan, one fiend began fremant firene, to commit a wicked sin in hell, on helle. which is always a fun word to encounter in Old English. And now we get the name, finally. So, as usual, pause, take a screenshot, and you guys can translate it if you want to. And if you guys, while I'm reading through, see any bits that you would like to have a go at translating on your own, type it in chat and I'll let you know how you did. God, I really need to get better at talking more slowly with this. Okay. It's like I sort of started my channel inspired by Jackson Crawford, and right now I'm doing a similar thing to what he does with Old Norse poems and such. But whereas he's got this really slow, deliberate, methodical way of speaking, I'm like frenetic and I'm running all over the place, like, oh my god, we got this kind of thing. Pulling up a manuscript. Yeah, exactly, Matt. An is like the ain in Old Norse for added emphasis. I'm like Old English Jackson Crawford having taken crack. I don't know. I'm not Old English Jackson Crawford. I'm nowhere near as good at Old English as he is at Old Norse. Goodness, I wish. So, was se grimmagas grendel hatten, mara merkstappa, say they moras held, fen on fasten. So, the fierce or the grim ghost was called Grendel. So look at that word order. The grim ghost was called Grendel. My mouse is jumping around for this. And we get two more adjectives to describe him. Oh, sorry, one adjective and a noun. Marre, the mere, the great. Merkstappa. Now that's interesting. Oh god, this is going to be one of those ones where I'm like, this compound word is so fascinating. Let me tell you about 1,001 different reasons. So merch, we have the modern English word mark and march. Sorry, marsh from there. And it relates to boundary. Now, why? Marshes are almost like they're liminal spaces, which by virtue of being liminal, constitute boundaries between areas. So they constitute boundaries between bodies of water, like a lake and or rivers, and bodies of land, like a field. And they're this in between. They're neither water nor are they fully land. They're like in between. And so and in cultures in general, I believe it's Anthony Golding has written about this within the field of anthropology. Across cultures in general, things, and particularly places, which are between two different states are usually psychologically distressing in some way. We associate them with bad things, with monsters and things outside of our society. This is what's happening here. Remember also what I talked about, the Flores Acht, the dominion of the sea, and how this is almost seems to be a bit like the Old English Valhalla, where like heroic warriors go to die. The heroic warriors go out to their like Valhalla out at sea. But that's a body of water. It's not a marsh that they go into. But one could imagine that in between a lake, maybe, a body of water, because the word for lake and sea are the same in Old English, in between a lake and sort of dry land, you might have a marshy area. And it's almost like in between human and divine territories, and also between secular and religious, whether a pagan religion or a Christian one. So there's that. So he's like a stepper of the merch, a marsh stepper. He's like going through that. But merk also means boundary, because like I said, the marsh in the middle, this like middle ground, is almost like a boundary between the domain of water and the domain of the earth. And do you remember how I said that the hall, when, oh, for fuck's sake, 1 second. God damn it. Anyway, right. So, do you guys remember how I said last week that the hall is aware of the edge heter of the boundary, the hatred creating boundaries that's going to come. Now, look at that. So, mer can also mean a boundary, like a mark or a march. And Grendel is the one who literally steps on boundaries. Merkstapper. Now, I have my problems. Yes, Michael, I'll get you 99. Does anyone want anything? I'll go get you guys something from the ice cream van. Who wants a flake? Goodness. Or a gumball. But yeah, no. So Grendel is literally a Merkstapper, and I have my issues. Believe you me, I will rant on about it if I need to. I have my issues with the field of psychoanalysis, especially as it gets applied in literary studies, which is my field. Matthew Barclay, you can tell them all about how dreadful psychoanalysis is. But one psychoanalytic paper that I have read, which I did actually find very enlightening, was Julia Kristeva's 1997 book, Le Pouvoir d'Horreur, which is my terrible French pronunciation for the powers of horror. She wrote it. The subtitle of that book was A Theory of Abjection, and she writes about how things which causes disgust, like a corpse, we reject psychologically as a form of establishing our own identity. I react. So there's a great quote by Julia Kristeva. I might try and find it because it can really help us to interpret this passage. And this is what I mean, by the way, about critical theory being useful for understanding literature, is that it gives us a different perspective that can really help us to see the passage in a way that's thought-provoking. Julia Kristeva, I reject that which... I abject that, I think. Introduction to Julia. Oh, god damn it. An essay on abjection. There we are. Hold on. Here we are. Oh, come on. Why can't you? So. So. A wound with blood and pus, or the sickly acrid smell of sweat of decay, does not signify death. In the presence of signified death, a flat encephalograph, for instance, I would understand, react, or accept. No, as in true theatre, without makeup or masks, refuse and corpses, so this is shit, like feces and corpses, show me what I permanently thrust aside in order to live. These bodily fluids, this defilement, this shit, are what life withstands hardly and with difficulty on the part of death. There I am, at the border of my condition as a living being. The powers of I cannot talk. The Powers of Horror is a really, really interesting book. I highly recommend you guys give it a go. You need to read it and reread it a couple of times to understand it, but it explains why we have horror reactions and disgust reactions to some things. And you can apply it to lots of different political things in society. Really, really fascinating. But my point is that it's that thing that I reject that which life rejects in order to sustain itself. Grendel has been cut out by the edge hitter, by the boundary marking hatred. And because of that, he walks on the boundaries, Merkstapper. He walks in that place between heroic masculinity and the sort of secular world of the land, in the marshes, quite literally on boundaries, in between earth and water. And Kristeva's argument might be that because Grendel is boundary defiling in that way, he is abominable. That's a key thing in Julia's book, in Kristeva's book, Powers of Horror, that things which transgress or violate boundaries are things which give us that reaction. And I think that's what's going on with this word Merkstapper. It's almost like the most horrifying thing for our subconscious is a thing that will not respect our boundaries. That's why we have such strong visceral reactions to rape. And this is it. This is Grendel stepping on the boundaries and transgressing the boundaries of the mead hall society from which he has been excluded. And notice what Grendel is sort of punished by Beowulf for. He's punished by Beowulf for invading Heorot, for stepping over boundaries, as his title is, as Merkstapper. Really fascinating juicy psychological insecurities getting played out with Grendel and in Beowulf here. It's so interesting. Let us continue. Sorry. I'm so sorry for all of this rambling. I really feel like Jordan Peterson when I do all of this stuff, but I hope and I pray that it's not as garbled and unintelligible. I really hope that I'm communicating something that is resonating with you guys and that you can understand where I'm coming from. And if anyone wants me to clarify something, please do, or just shut the fuck up, because I will do that as well. I ought to. Okay, so we get the spirit's name. The spirit's name is Grendel. He who Mordas held, who held the moors, the fen on fasten, not the men, for fuck's sake, the fen and the stronghold. I put men in the vocab section like an idiot. So Grendel rules these places, basically. And these places are described as the Erd Fifelkines, of the, goodness, of it's the sort of race of monsters. Fifel is like these, I believe they're giants which inhabited the earth before the Great Flood. So Grendel is almost like the remnant of monstrous humanity. And he is described here as one sadi wer de huile. So the miserable man protected the earth of the giant kind for a while. Sidan, since, so because, Shippend him verschriven havde, since the Lord had exiled him, cut him out in the race of kin. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Yes. Jack, actually, what you said, that neurologically the disgust part of the brain was part of the olfactory system. It's interesting to think about perhaps some of the sensory aspects of this. So we hear a lot about the music and the sound of the hall, which is apparently sort of painful for Grendel to hear, probably because it's like a sort of reminder of that which he's been exiled from. But these words, the moors, the fens and the foss. Well, exactly, Andy. I mean, this is a poem told in early medieval England, and it's in Old English. Of course, they would care about more. And let me tell you a short story. So, oddly enough, I'm doing a PhD now in Anglo-Saxon literature. And when I was a teenager, I was 17-ish. I was completely undecided on what I wanted to do at university. It was between two choices. I either wanted to apply to what I ended up getting into, which was archaeology and anthropology at Oxford. The reason I wanted to was because I loved social science. I loved learning about human societies, including modern ones, and I wanted to learn about that. That curiosity hasn't stopped, which is why I'm talking about politics on Saturday, and discourse and cultural discourse. So that's why I applied to archaeology and anthropology, because anthropology is like a social science. The other subject I very, very nearly applied for was Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic at Cambridge. And Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic at Cambridge, it's basically what I'm trying to do on my channel. It's like you learn medieval languages, so you have to learn how to speak one of these languages, which is like medieval Latin, Old English, Old Norse, Old Irish, or Old Welsh. You have to learn one of these languages at a minimum. Many people learn more than one. And you also learn a bit about the history, and you learn the literature, you learn how to read manuscripts. It's like, it's everything I want to do with my channel. I love it. I've loved it since I was like 17. I was trying to learn how to read the Doomsday Book in Latin at 17. Oh my god, I remember that. Bernard Bischoff's Latin Paleography. If you go on my channel, you'll see how to read medieval manuscripts. There's a playlist for it. And I was learning that stuff when I was like 17, and everyone was like, "This is super fucking boring. What the hell?" And I was like, "I love Bischoff so much." Anyway, but because I was undecided, I actually went to both of the open days. I went to the Cambridge Open Day, and oh, I can't remember his name now, but the guy who teaches Old English at Cambridge, we in Old English studies, we usually put Beowulf at the forefront of what we do because it's what most people have heard of and it's most exciting to most people. This is what I'm doing right now, even though I would probably find Christ and Satan just as exciting and interesting to talk about, probably more so because I'm a Christian myself and Beowulf is more of a secular poem. But anyway, I went to the open day, and they gave little lectures as like a sample of what you get in like learning Anglo-Saxon, Norse, and Celtic at Cambridge. If you guys know History with Hilbert, the YouTuber, he's doing that degree or has finished that degree at Cambridge. Really cool stuff. His paleography is wrong though. His video on like the term Anglo-Saxon, he makes a mistake in his paleography, and funnily enough, he says that this he shows a charter and he says that it says of the Anglo-Saxons. That's not actually true. It says of the English. So he's making the argument for Old English as a term rather than for Anglo-Saxon because he's got his paleography wrong. But that's a side point. I was at the open day, and he read out this part of Beowulf in the Old English, and he said, think about this, imagine the moors, the fen and the fast, and imagine you're freezing in some sort of, or maybe you're just at the edge of a fire in Old English. Think about the dynamics of that. Maybe you're in a hall and maybe there's a fire, and near the outest parts of the hall, if you're less prestigious, you're further away from the fire, you're maybe a bit cold. There's a sensory element to all of this. The moors, the fen and the fast. You'd have been into the fens, out there in the mists where it's dark and you can't see, so you can't see, it's scary. You would have smelled it when they said these words, the moors, the fen and fast. These visceral, powerful smells that just evokes to your imagination. And also this thing about Merkstapper and the contexts of what it means. If you're in this kind of hall society and you're maybe at the far end of the hall, you're closer to the door, further away from the fire, you're maybe a bit cold, you may be a bit resentful, why don't I get to sit up there at the top? And maybe this part of the poem is like, if you become a Merkstapper, if you overstep your boundaries, you get exiled. You get verschriven into the race of Cain, away from the mead hall, into the moors and the fen and the fast with the cold and the animals. And these parts of the poems may have served as a means of like reminding people of social control at the time. It's possible. But the point is that in his lecture, this guy I can't remember his name, but he's the guy who teaches Old English literature on the Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic course at Cambridge. He said, bear in mind with all of this that there's so much phenomenological, like sensational stuff. They were feeling this poem, whereas we're almost just reading it, and it's really important to bear that in mind as we go through. That an Old English audience was feeling and smelling and hearing. Oh, they were. We're hearing it as well because I'm reading it out to you. But they were smelling and feeling and touching this poem because it was part of their world in more ways than we are. It's an important thing to bear in mind. Ignore me. Michael says, I'd love to learn Norman French. Actually, guys, I have to translate I have to finish translating a Norman French poem for next semester. I could do that with you guys on stream because I can read Norman French slowly and translate it. So we could do that if people wanted to. It is Marie de France's Les du Lamval, is what I have to translate from Norman French. And I could stand to practice my Norman French, so we could do that. Anyway, from start to finish, what this is was de grimme gas grendel hatten, maar de merkstappen, ze de moras held fenon fasten. Fiffel kinnes one sally where that a wheeler, sidan him shippen for skriven haft in keine kinne. So, the fierce ghost was called Grendel, the great boundary stepper, he who held the moors, the fen, and the stronghold. The miserable man guarded the giant kind's land for a long while. This is like Jotunheim, basically, in Norse mythology, since the Lord had cut him out into the race of kin. Yeah, for Shriven, yeah, it's awesome. This is why I say Old English poetry is especially beautiful reading it aloud, and this is why, God, why do people want to read fucking Seamus Heaney? I'm sure it's great, or even J.R. Tolkien's translation, when you have, you know, Jesete sierete sunanon monan leomanta leochta landboendum. Oh, it's just like, it sounds so freaking good. Why would you not want to enjoy that yourself? Oh, God. But yeah, right. So, I am going to take a sip. Does anyone have any questions about the various things that I've been rambling about with this fucking poem? God, I am becoming like Jordan Peterson, aren't I? I'm gonna start crying about Beowulf and Pinocchio or something. This is my future. Except I can be the other way around. I can be like, Beowulf is an omen of like, you know, Jordan Peterson's like, oh my god, the trans rights activists are gonna come take away everything. I can be the opposite. I'm like, Beowulf is a warning about how the trans exclusionary radical feminists are going to come and take away everything. I should totally do that. Nah, I can't be fucked right now. Anyway, right, so, as usual, take a screenshot of this. And if you want to translate some lines, go for it, give it a shot. So, oh, is there a simple grammar book for Old English? There is. I'll show you guys. Okay, cool. So, yeah, this is, because this is good. So, a real problem with Old English is that there's not too many good guides for it. With Leof Win, I actually think this is by far and away the best book. Yes, Matt, my I should somehow try to make a lobster analogy with Beowulf. Although to be fair, I literally at one point today I've been talking about how these themes in Beowulf echo this North Korean cartoon. So maybe I've got something going on there. No, not eBay. Fuck. Fine, let's go to Amazon. Right, this book, guys. This book. Learn Old English with Leofwin. Can we see inside it? But as you can see, I bought it like ages ago. I've since given mine on to a friend. Otherwise, I would have carried on. Why can't I see these images? God damn it. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. Why can't I open image in new tab? Here we are, finally. Look at this. It's adorable. So you have it's basically a children's book for learning Old English. And they have these drawings that are done in the Beowulf tapestry style. And actually, if you go on YouTube, you have some lessons from the book provided, and I will post the link to it now in chat for people, and you can listen to them reading Old English. Unfortunately, it's quite quiet. Oh my god, it's me! That's me studying Beowulf. Look at that. Learn Old English with Leofwin. So it's this one. This is the playlist of them, and many of these are just basically bits and pieces taken from the book, and they have audio readings. So like, ich hatte Kluftwert, and this is min Bruder Foxteil. And you can listen to it. Like, I'll pause this for a second. And if I turn the volume up real high, you'll hear it.
Und this is mein Bruder Foxtiger. Ich hatte Vorteile, and this is min Schwester, Kluwer.
Um, yeah, so I'll post this link in chat to the playlist. It's a really good playlist. Can I link this playlist? Yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, there we are. Share link. But my best advice, actually, especially for Andy C, who wants a simple grammar of Old English, I would go with this. Because a lot of the other ones, like Peter Baker's Old English, is really difficult. I think I also have here. Wait, do I have it, or have I lost it? The Cambridge Old English Reader is quite good as well. One thing I might recommend also is Cadman's story. This is self-promotion, I suppose, but it's free. I have made this edition of Cadman's story, and it is glossed the same way as I gloss Beowulf, and I think it makes it quite easy to read because every word is on the side here, and that's the same thing as the Cambridge Reader does for you. So there is a link to that so that you guys can have access to that. But the short of it is, my recommendation is this book, Learn Old English with Leof Wynne. I think it is by far and away the best, and therefore I will also put a link to the Amazon book in chat for anyone who wants to buy it. I used this when I was starting Old English. It's really cute, it's lovely, it teaches you everyday sentences in Old English. It also helps you see the connections. Like you learn words like duru and chesa and water, and you learn to see how it's actually not that different from modern English if you get down to it. So then there's that. Jack Tier asks, off subject, how do I feel about Jordan Peterson's view on how I believe the whole of academia is compromised by the left? So, yes, I am part of that academia compromising the left. Mwahahaha. No, I'm kidding, partially. But the point is, I don't know if you have seen the debate he has with Slavoj Žižek, but at one point, and this is a tactic I do all the time, you might have noticed I did this with Simon. Peterson is like, these postmodern neo-Marxists are ruining academia. And then Slavoj Žižek just asks, who are these postmodern neo-Marxists? Give me a name. And Peterson doesn't have any names. If you listen to what he says about it, he talks in these vague, abstract terms about unnamed postmodern neo-Marxists, and they say like they're everywhere. I encounter this all the time in like debates with people online. They're like, this is happening all the time. It's such an issue. I'm like, okay, could you give me an example, please? Like a news report or a police report or a study or an academic, something like this. And like, no, it happens all the time, but I just can't think of a single example right now. And I'm just like, dude, you know. And so I use that tactic all the time when I'm debating with people. It works impressively well. And it doesn't even have to be like a confrontational tactic, because part of it is like, if they give you an example, then you can work with an actual concrete example and you can talk about the real thing. I think it's much more useful to talk about a specific thing than to go on and on about these like abstract straw men of arguments. But one thing I do find interesting, and maybe some people in the chat who came to me from History Debunked can attest to this. I have a suspicion with my case that people like the whole like Western heritage deal. They don't like that I'm very left wing and I am open with that, especially that I'm like socially progressive, because I think a lot of Simon's views are also like economically left wing. But I'm very socially progressive. Like I'm very LGBT friendly, and I'm in favor of racial justice and such. I think this doesn't sit well with a lot of people who are interested in like Western heritage kind of stuff. But the fact that I can do this and the fact that I do this forces people. I think it gives them a degree of respect for me. I've seen people be like, at least she clearly knows her stuff about languages, which is true. I do respect me, but I say out of insecurity. But the I think it also has the advantage of forcing people to actually engage with the text, because when I go on some like Tumblr-esque rant on my channel about how this poem is about soy femboys in Vandal, North Africa, I think a lot of people who are like Mo Western heritage and who like medieval languages because of the Western heritage like angle of it, they're not overly fond of some like blue-haired SJW-esque type saying that stuff about their Western heritage. Is typically not part of the aesthetic of Western heritage. The aesthetic of Western heritage is very white, male, and heroic. But in order to get at me about it, they have to engage with the text because I don't give them a translation. I'm not going to go like, I'm not reading from Seamus Heaney, which they can understand. I am forcing them to engage in it on my level of understanding. All of this that we've done at Beowulf, me talking about the hall and heroic masculinity, I've forced you guys to absorb a bunch of gender theory and trans theory and queer theory, even critical race theory, in a way that you guys wouldn't have had to do that if you had had the translation available to you and you didn't have to rely on me as an interpreter to guide you through it. Consider doing Greek stories. Harry, yeah, I could do. I would like to. So I'm studying ancient Greek at the moment. I've actually got my ancient Greek book. I'm studying ancient Greek with Athanase here. The problem is though, Harry, that I don't like. I'm not confident in Old Greek. Like I can't read it fluently in the way that I can for Old English or for Latin, or Old Italian. So I would be worried about making mistakes. And I certainly couldn't like I did for Merkstapper. I couldn't break down that word and be like, this is what it means in a way that I can with Old English. So I wouldn't, it would be more like a study with me session than a let me help you read through some old Greek stuff. But it would be really interesting to do so. I would like to one day. Maybe one day if I get good enough at Greek, I will do that. A lot of us respect your point of view, but history does not always back it up. We're heading for chaos in the direction that we are going. It's very dramatic, very Jordan Peterson view to take on this. Yes, but look at the way they behave. Freedom of speech is really compromised. Okay, I'm gonna go off. Here's the thing, because guys, like, I don't get it. Like, I'm literally in academia, and I have seen Sheila Jeffreys. I'm reading Sheila Jeffreys. She's a gender critical feminist, and she wrote a book, Gender Hurt, which is her like, it's a feminist view of transsexuality, and because I'm changing my views recently. A lot of radical feminist and gender critical views that I previously rejected, I now think are quite convincing. So I'm reconsidering some of these books that I've read, and Sheila Jeffreys is one of them. But she says at one point that there's this environment that stifles discussion in academia. And maybe it's because I'm not yet at the publishing stage. Maybe it's because I'm still sort of coming out of the student stage. Like last semester, I handed in the last coursework essays that I'll ever have to for a subject at school and get module credits for it. I've done a module, guys. For the point, I did that for the last time. And maybe there's more freedom there, but that was sort of my point, is that in my experience at that level, I've disagreed with the teachers numerous times on psychoanalysis, on like queer reproduction, on trans issues, on various things. I've disagreed with my supervisors, and I haven't been shut down. They haven't been like, you can't think about these things. There are some degrees in which this is true. There are some, on my queer theory class, the supervisor, who, to be fair to her, is trans, so I understand why she wouldn't want to do this, but she said that the only illegitimate perspective here is a gender critical perspective, which I don't like. That is shutting out viewpoints which have a lot of currency in academia presently, almost out of willful ignorance. So I don't like that. But I don't think it's, the point is, Jack, I don't think it's as pervasive a culture of censorship as Jordan Peterson makes it out to be. I think it's, part of it also is that you can find critical papers of all of these ideas being published. So I don't know how some are getting published and if there's like this massive censorship thing. Oh, thank you, Harry. I like your outrageous, honest, intelligent courage, and I appreciate that. Harry, you do not know nothing. You've read a lot of stuff that I'm completely ignorant of. I should have a go at translating the Voynich manuscript. Goodness. Yes. Agreed, Matt. A lot of the left down shut down free speech if you don't agree. Yeah, I mean, okay, we'll move on for the time being, but I just don't think that that's not my experience. I've had a lot of experience in academia, in pretty left wing spaces, and I've had the free speech to disagree with my teachers plenty. It's not gotten in my way at all. Right, so onwards. So take a screenshot if you want to, and give a go at translating on your own. But otherwise, Thonna queam jarach etjedrykten, thas the hei abel sloch, nee fer hei thar the fachte, ac hei hin fer forrach, metal for the mane, mankine fram. So actually, this is basically just repeating this last bit that the Lord exiled him into the race of Cain. Now, yellow is the word that's doing the sentence. So, Etchedrichten, the eternal Lord, avenge that quelm, that murder. Our word culling is related to this, or quelling a rebellion. You can remember it that way. Thas, now this is one of those words which suggests an older stage of the language, or which suggests that Beowulf was written, that the poem Beowulf was composed and codified earlier than the manuscript it's written in, because by the time that they're writing this manuscript, using the word "thas" to mean because of this is not really done. Instead, you would expect "tham" there or "for tham" there. But that's not what you have here. So this is an archaic feature in Old English that we have here. The he Abel sloch, he slew Abel, he slew Abel. Ne je fer he thara fachthe. Nor did he, and that's again referring to the well, actually no. I think he is referring. Wait. No, wait, no. I think it is referring to the Lord. The Lord, which is he, did not rejoice in that feud, but he, that's the Lord again, Hine, and that I think is Grendel they're referring to, exiled him far away. Metod, and that's again the he, that's also the Etchedrichten. So Metod is like creator. For the mane, because of that sin, man kine fram. Now this is a thing where Old English sometimes puts prepositions after the noun, so they're like postpositions. So man kine fram, away from mankind, is what we have. Also, it's very dark in here. Goodness. So the eternal Lord avenged that killing because he slew Abel. Nor did he, thus the Lord, rejoice in that feud, but he, the Lord, exiled him, that's Grendel or Abel, far away. The Creator exiled him on account of that sin away from mankind. So that is the that's that. Oh, this is lovely. This is one of those ones where I got distracted in an earlier stream and I started talking about this. So let us read. Oh yeah, take a screenshot. Translate this. This is one of my favorite bits. It's fucking juicy, right? Thanan untydras ela on walkon ertanas on ilfe on orkneas swilche gigantas thou with gode wunon lange thrage. Hey him thus lean for the eld. Also, oh god, why don't people want to treat Beowulf in the original? Hey him thus lean for the eld. How nice does it sound? Oh my god, sorry. Okay. Breathe. Thanon utiras ela onwachon. The evil progenies all woke up. Jotuns, so like I said in the last time I talked about this, if you go to Jackson Crawford's channel, he talks about how the word Jotun in Old Norse, we shouldn't translate it, he argues, as giant or something. It's its own kind of category, and we should put it in there. This is a cognate word, Eoten and Jotun. It's the same kind of thing. So maybe the Eotenas functions similar to the Jotunas in Old Norse. Can't know, but it's an interesting thing to think about. And Ilfa, these are elves, and Orkneas, orcs, monsters. Tolkien got the word orc and brought it into modern English from the Old English. Really exciting stuff. Although, interestingly enough, actually, in a funny, awkward thing, in his essay, which I have here on translating Beowulf, he actually says that we shouldn't do that. He says that Beowulf is not an opportunity to resurrect, in his words, older English, archaic English words from their Anglo-Saxon or Old Norse graves. It's a really cool line. But what he means is that we shouldn't use words like orcs or Jotuns to resurrect when we translate Beowulf, because in his idea this is misleading. We should the translator should be knowledgeable enough to do his own thing. So giants, they should know whether to say giants or demons or something like this. That is an interesting point, though, and Jackson Crawford, in one of his crowdcasts on ghouls and the undead in Old Norse mythology, says how, in some ways, at least on the Old Norse side, this all becomes similar. They're all sort of some kind of weird demon, and they're definitely like this in Old English as well. Where do we have it? All of these monsters that we just seen are the Fifelkin. They are the race of Cain, and they're all almost descended from Cain. So it's not like your typical fantasy RPG where these are different sort of races with their own stats and such. These are just like demons can take different kinds of forms, is what this is. So these are the kinds of demons that have woken up. The giants and the elves and orcs, such giants. So that's what I'm saying. These are all kinds of giants who, against God, struggled. Those who struggled against God for a long while, and then him thas lean forgjeld. God repaid them a revenge for this. So this is essentially repeating this part, but more dramatic in saying that this is what these lines are saying in lines 111 to 114. They're saying that this stuff in lines 107 to 110 apply to all they apply to all of the monsters that live in the moors, the fen and the fast and the strongholds, rather than just Grendel. And what this is doing is it's setting up Grendel as like a mascot. Grendel is the visible forefront, the figurehead of monster kind. And that is it, guys. We've made it through up until the end of the gloss. Excellent work, guys. Following along, 10 out of 10. Does anyone have questions about this stuff that I have been rambling interminably about with regards to Beowulf? Goodness. Ooh, hang on. I'm gonna go back. This is my favorite. This is one of my favorite songs on the album. I love this song. Not this one. It starts now. Here we are. Oh, I love this song. Right. So, yeah. Anyone have any questions? And if otherwise, I'm actually going to so this is the point at which I'm going to clip the stream and put it up as its own separate thing so that you guys can, what I'm going to end up doing is with these streams is have clips that are essentially this is the part of the stream where I did Beowulf and I read you through chapter 2, and for now until the end of the stream I'm just going to go through and I'm going to put the colors in like we do normally. And same thing as usual, you guys can, if you want to hazard a guess at translating any of this stuff while I go, or if you have any questions you want to ask, feel free to. Oh, that's the guy, Matt, good point. Orman Jakobsson wrote a book called The Troll Inside You. That's really cool. Nice. Very nice. So yeah, I'm going to put in the colours. We'll first do the verbs. So neosian is a verb. Become is came. After beth jabuna have done. Fund. That's a really cool one. That's like found. Swefun. Sleep. Yep. Nekuthon on Shaftware. Now let's get the nominatives, the subjects of our sentences. Harry, is that a question for me? Was Gulliver's Travel the first satire? Honestly, my knowledge of literature falls off a cliff after the year 1500 and even after the year 1100, realistically speaking. So I do not know, I'm afraid. So ring. Oh yeah, also so you know how I ramble on about how the Lord of the Rings as an idea is just like all throughout Beowulf. It's fucking everywhere. This is another one. They're called the Ring Danes. They're literally like the people of the rings. Like, come on. So much fun. One thing that might be cool actually at one point to do, I'll link it to you because it's a cool video. Tolkien Exodus. Tice Pork, by the way, absolutely lovely guy. I have met him personally at an online conference. Very lovely man, at least from what I know of him. And there is a really cool lecture he did on Tolkien's Old English Exodus, and he goes in this lecture about like it goes into some of Tolkien's views on how you should translate things, and he also has these lovely little videos called F off Grammarly. Is that Grammarly? Whatever, Vidyard. He also has these lovely videos called Old English Grammar Bites, where he gives you little guides for how to translate, how to understand Old English grammar. So I think it was it who asked for a simple Old English grammar guide? Andy C. This might be good for you. These videos really helped me learn Old English, really. So yeah, I need to check after because I'm doubting myself as to which case it takes, and I do not want to make a mistake on this. This is why when we don't know, we look it up and we check. Nothing wrong with checking. Oh, for fuck's sake. Because in all the one that it comes from in Proto-Germanic, it can take the accusative or dative, but it's different when it does. Oh goodness. I'm gonna. Oh, actually no. I could maybe try. Oh no, I can use the electronic Beowulf. Why am I being stupid? I'll go with the electronic Beowulf. Because they will tell me which fucking case it is. Christ. Oh, give me this. Also, I love this freaking song. It's Pog. There we are. Electronic Beowulf. Exactly, Michael. Do not fall outside the boundaries of your society. And funnily enough, I joked that I was going on like Jordan Peterson, but that's what Jordan Peterson does with his whole like dragon and chaos and boundaries and order and chaos, this kind of stuff. I'm basically saying similar things. My Christianity is also similar to Jordan Peterson's. It's just that I don't believe in like what I want to do with that Christianity is more socially progressive than what Jordan Peterson was to do with his, I think. after Beorthea, that's like beer drinking, but what actually is it? Right. Okay, so after, oh, with dative. Okay, cool. Now I know. Good to know that after takes the dative. Because in Gothic, the word like athar can take the dative or the accusative, which is why I was confused. Fan thar inne. Athelinga, that's genitive. That's of the princes. Of the princes. Jedricht. And also, Michael, I'm really happy that you like, when you said that, like, don't fall outside the bindings of your society or you'll be cast into the wilderness like Grendel. That gave me a lot of hope because it's like, this. Don't take this as like insulting of your intelligence. I'm saying this is an insult of my own like communicative abilities. I was like worried that I was like rambling on and nobody was going to like remember or take in fucking anything that I said, and that I was being a bad communicator in that way. But you got like a key point that I'm getting at with the text. So thank you. On Uchtan, let me see. I would also be curious, Michael, although you don't have to say so at all. Nobody has to say anything. Because you mentioned that I have changed your mind on something. What thing was that I changed your mind on? I'm actually going to be admitting to a bunch of things that I've already admitted to some of them, but I'm going to be admitting to things that recently I have changed my mind on Saturday when I stream politics. Sorry, what? Hold on. Oh, that wasn't Uchtan. Oh shit. Have we skipped something? Oh no, it's because I'd already done that. Thank God. Right. Okay. That on Uchtan. Okay. Right. That's See, in Gothic, right? So in Old English, this ending for this kind of verb, the accusative, genitive, and dative. This is the weak. The weak nouns. They all end in an. Whereas in Gothic, it's nice and distinguished. So it would be a in the nominative, an in the accusative, ins in the genitive, and in the dative. So there's actually a nice distinction between them. Whereas in Old English, you don't know. So you have to figure it out from context, like what the preposition is. So yeah. Jack Tia says, I cannot even believe Jesus, Yeshua, existed. I know that there was a great oral tradition, but nothing was written about him until 6 years after his alleged death. Jack, that's not true. Josephus, who is a Jewish historian, wrote a lot of sorry, not, but he mentions Jesus's rebellion. Tacitus also, as a near contemporary, describes Jesus. Oh, thank you, Ganda. I appreciate that. Pleasure. This is my goal. Like I want to make this stuff available to people online. And I think, especially with Old English and Beowulf, I found a bit my niche in a way. I mean, Beowulf is like not an endless, but it's a huge source of free content. I mean, right now we're coming up to about oh goodness. So there's about 660 slides in this whole thing of the text of Beowulf laid out like that. 660 slides. And we have done we will have coloured in about 30 slides. Meaning that we'll have done, I don't know, like one out of 200 of the text, 1/200th of the text. So basically Beowulf is just this like well of content that I can pick up and start rambling about. And people find it interesting because it's Beowulf and it's heroic masculinity. And I also enjoy it. Like Beowulf is crazy fun. And I can just keep going back to this well, there is that word, by the way, the sway that do you remember do you remember earlier in the poem they were talking about what is in the hall, and hairpan sway is what we had. So the sound of the harp, and then in this verse we are this instead. What comes up instead is the morgensway, which is interesting. It just means like morning sound. But I think there is maybe some degree of pun on the word morning. Because I think murnen is the word for like related to morning in Old English, like miserable. And I think there's a degree of pun on morgen and murnen in Old English going on here, because the cry is going up in the morning after Grendel has like slaughtered people in the hall, because that's what this verse is talking about. And it's like a pun on the fact that it's happening in the morning and they're miserable. And this is another one of the kinds of things that you just don't get in a you can't translate a pun like this in the in a translation. Goodness. Mara Theoden, the great king. By the way, what's the word? Theoden in The Lord of the Rings. That's literally, Theoden is just the Old English word for king. Oh, nice. Michael said to understand some of the elements of critical race theory more clearly. Yeah, that's great. Like, I'm really glad that I was able to do that, because that's kind of the thing. I always found it confusing, especially before doing the series with Simon, that like I think what happens is people hear other people talking about critical race theory, and they hear that it's bad, and they think, oh, that's bad. I don't bother with it, and they don't look into it further. But then when they see someone advocating for it, they think, oh, this is the scary thing I heard about from my friend. And I wanted to encourage people with that series to actually, well, what do they actually say? What are critical race theorists actually saying? And is it as bad as we think? And like you would have seen in the series, Michael, like there are some nativist critical race theorists who are more separatist in their thinking, but many are sort of not assimilationists, but more sort of, unifying in their approach. And I think that's good. Who is his name? Cornel West, who recently, I believe, stepped down from the School of Divinity at Harvard. He, if you listen to how he talks about racial politics, he's very much in favor of kind of unity, between people. Gander, does Tacitus talk about Rome? That's interesting. Because I mean, we could if people really want to, we could have a look at Tacitus now. Like, I can load it up on the Latin library and have a look if people want me to check what he actually says about it. Also, look at how much yellow we've got here. Fucking hell. I'm not a scholar, but I've been led to believe nothing was written about Jesus until 60 years after the alleged death, and the stories evolve. Dr. Richard Chambers presents it well. Okay, interesting. So, Jack, it's certainly true that manuscripts of the Bible don't come in for a few centuries after Jesus' death. But we see iconographic evidence for Christianity before then. So in Roman catacombs from the 2nd and even 1st century, I don't know if we have 1st century, but certainly from the 2nd century's Common Era onwards, we have frescoes depicting scenes from the life of Christ, which suggests that the gospel story was propagating. Look at all that yellow, bloody hell. Because most of this is just talking about how, I believe, Hrothgar reacts to the hall being devastated. Oh, and this word here, nas, this is a nice thing that Old English does. You can have the word no and is like merged together. So this is a combination of ne and was. So nas, which is very cute. Ane nicht. I think that's a accusative that I want to check. Nas hit lang. Yeah, accusative. Because sometimes I make mistakes, so I need to check that I'm not making mistakes. If you're fremde morth bela marde, a greater murder, so that's going to be accusative as well. And no mearn forde, fachte, the feud. Ah, okay. The fachte and feudene. I think those might be datives. No, they're accusatives. Goodness. That's the thing with Old English is a lot of the endings, unlike in Gothic, a lot of the endings are identical, so it can be hard to tell sometimes. These should be archived. Harry, do you mean like these streams should be archived? Because you know they are. You know I have like all of these Beowulf streams are recorded in a playlist. I think it's Beowulf readings on my channel. I'll post a link in chat. You guys can have a look at that. Middle English manuscripts. I don't post them as videos usually on my main channel because I don't want to clog up my people's video feeds with all of these streams because they're very long and rambly. But where are we at? Critical theory, Beowulf readings. Here we go. I think I didn't put the last one in, so I need to do that. I will do that. So what this is, that's just an audio reading of the first bit. This is like, you know how I said that what I'm going to do is take the streams and chop them up so that the part where I'm translating is separate. That's what this is. So this is me, sorry, goodness, this is me reading, translating, and commenting on chapter 1, similar style to how Jackson Crawford does for his videos on Old Norse. This is just the whole stream, like including the after bit where we're just hanging out and glossing the text. So I'll put that in the thing. Is squishing? Oh yes, absolutely. Squishing old word is squishing two words together like that common in Old English? Absolutely, Gander. It's called kenning. So it's a poetic feature, although you see it in non-poetic words as well. And sometimes they're almost like riddles. Let me try and think of one. Well, fuck it. Let's just go back to the beginning of the poem. It's only about 30 slides in. So it's in the very first chapter where they're talking about the Spear Danes. Here we are. So all that him eichwil started umsitten. I'll go from the beginning. Hey, that's frofrly about wags on the rock and well from them thach. All that him eichwil started umsitten over runner the hurlan shoulder gum and gildan. That was God cunning. So he awaited consolation on account of this. He grew under the clouds. He prospered with wordiments until each of those sitting around the table had to obey him. Offer Hronrada. So the Hron is like whale, and Rada is like our word road. Rad, right? Road. So it's whale road, and this means sea because it's like the road the whale walks on. So Ganda, these are the kinds of kennings, these like mythical, riddling, poetic words, which are very common in Old English literature, absolutely. And Old Norse literature as well, very common. That was to fast on thumb. This is one of the things I like as well, actually. Was to fast on them. He was too fast, too fastened, too firm in that. He was too set in his ways. But the reason I like it is because this is still how we talk today. It was too much for me, too strong for you, this kind of thing. We do this still in modern English, and I think it's super, super cool. Finde him Eleshuar. This is an interesting bit. Hold on. Huh. That's extremely interesting. Um, Forgive me, by the way, guys. I'm just trying to figure out this passage because it might be implying that Grendel can speak, which would be extremely interesting. More firmly, say. Okay. Kept him then far and far away, more firmly. Who escaped? Okay, right. No, that's not it. Oh, okay. No, no. So this is not saying that Grendel can talk. My bad. But what this is saying is that other people in the society had encounters with Grendel. So what this is saying is then he was this is describing Grendel as Earthfinder, which is interesting. It links back to what Michael said. Ooh, Michael's got a fascinating question. I am going to I'm going to answer that shortly. But yeah, so what this is saying, Thar was Earthfinder de him Eres waar je roemli korraste sochte, bed after boerdom, daar him je bergnod was. Je seid sortly te swertlen takne, heel thene hette, heel hinne sidan furdan fastor, se tham feonde atwand. So, then he was easily found who sought rest elsewhere, far away from them. This is Grendel, who is easily found. He sought a bed within his chambers, Burum, and this is presumably a chambers under the lake where Grendel's mother also resides. When he was beckoned to them, I think, or like called to them, and I think this is called summoned by the loud noise of the hall, perhaps. And then it's like he who escaped from the fiend kept himself afterwards far away securely and spoke truly of the oh goodness, with a clear sign. I have coloured this wrong. Let me see. Let me just check the grammar on the electronic Beowulf. Swear. Yeah, no, it's a dative. Sorry. So, with a clear sign. So he spoke of the hatred of the Hall Thanes with a clear sign. So what this is saying is that when Grendel wasn't attacking Heorot, he was actually easily found, and sometimes people would just come across his lair, and they would they would quickly discover that Grendel does not like Hall Thanes, and so they ran as far away and they stayed as far away as they could, and they would tell other people about the horrors of Grendel, which is pretty fun. But this does not, unfortunately, mean that Grendel is speaking, which would be very fun if it was. And so Michael is asking, do I think Tolkien got some of his ideas for Gollum from Grendel? Tolkien is quite sympathetic towards Gollum. That's a really interesting question. Some of them, absolutely. So, I don't know if it's quite. I don't know if it's quite the same as Grendel's lair, but Grendel's lair, in terms of location and the association with water, but not like a great body of water, but like a shallow body of water, like a marsh. Because correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't Gollum live in, is it the Mines of Moria and in these shallow lakes for a long time where he sort of preys on goblins and fish and the occasional thing. So he's in these shallow waters. In the same way as Grendel lives among the moors and the fen and the strongholds, as we see in this. Wait, really? What? Where's the? Yeah, as Grendel lives in the moors and the fen and the fast. So there's that. There's also absolutely Gollum kills, isn't his brother Deagle? And this, Tolkien it was probably subconscious because Tolkien says that he did not deliberately try to make the Lord of the Rings, at least at first, a Catholic analogy. So there's definitely an echo there of Gollum killing Deagle and of not of Grendel obviously killing not of Grendel killing Abel, but of Grendel being responsible for killing Abel because of the his ancestry. Exactly, Gollum was an outcast as he was originally a hobbit. So yeah, Gollum is sort of what Grendel will become. There are some differences though. Gollum does not try to return to society. Gollum stays where he is. So I would maybe argue that Gollum actually represents all of the three monsters in Beowulf merged together in some ways. Grendel's mother, maybe less so. I would have to think about this more. But certainly Gollum and the dragon, actually. Although Smaug is borrowed very heavily from the dragon in Beowulf anyway. But Smaug, but Gollum functions in some of the same ways as the dragon. Gollum hoards this treasure, and do you remember in the first time we did Beowulf, I talked about these cups in the dragon's hall and these rings as well, the treasure rings, and how in the dragon's lair these things are stationary and they're not moving and they're not therefore giving drink and fostering human relationships. In the same way, Gollum's ring, the ring of power, it's power, but it's sterile and dead. It doesn't create life. It only has the power really to take life or to cause destruction. Treasure and rings function the same way in Beowulf. In a weird way, nothing good comes of rings in Beowulf. Even though the lords give out rings, Hrothgar and such lot, they sit on their seat and they give out rings to people. Do you remember last week we talked about how when Halfdane made the hall, he was going to distribute to old and young. Here we are, look. He was going to Yadalan, Yeringom, and Ealdom, and he was going to give out to them. What again was he going to give out to them? Well, it just says everything here, but later on I think it says here we are. Yeah, he gave out rings. Bears deelde. So Halfdane gives out the rings, right? This is something that nobles in Beowulf are doing, but I actually don't think anything good is coming of it, really, because like we said before, the whole poem of Beowulf is insecurity about whether the mead hall society is inherently doomed to fragmentation and falling apart. And I think giving out the rings is part of it. I think it's no coincidence that Tolkien in the Lord of the Rings, like Sauron's giving out of rings, these rings which sit idly typically and they don't create life. Or they don't foster social relationships. If anything, they destroy social relationships. Like they destroyed the relationship between Gollum and his brother, Deagle, originally. And they threatened to destroy the relationship between Sam and Frodo. Here as well, the lords are giving out rings. This is literally a lord giving out rings. Like it's what it is. It's in the text. But the poem is really insecure and worried that this act of giving out rings is just not a good way to run a society, and that doing so is going to lead to greater suffering for people down the line, especially if the society lacks strong men like Beowulf who can sustain it. And I put strong men in really heavy quotation marks because if you look up like people talking about Beowulf online, especially on YouTube, it's the most standard take is Beowulf is a strong man and he puts his life on the line to defend people, and Western feminists these days think that masculinity is toxic and they want to prevent heroic men from killing dragons because that's what men need to do in today's society. And it's the most basic surface level reading of Beowulf. It's like they read Seamus Heaney's translation, fuck all else, and they're like, this is how Beowulf works, this is how we should work. And I hate that. It's just like really like it's a chimp level analysis of the text, which, as I hope I've shown you guys, Beowulf is so much more interesting than strongman hero kind of thing. There's so much more going on here about society and culture. So why did I even bring that up? Yeah, like in terms of like the analogy with sorry, the whole society. So Beowulf as a poem is scared, it's insecure that the kind of society which functions on the basis of strong men and lords giving out rings, like here, and as Sauron does in the Lord of the Rings, I think that whole act of giving out rings is actually not good, even though the lords are doing it here, because yeah, the lords are doing it here, but the poet is worried that it's not actually a good thing to do this, and that giving out rings is a bad way to run a society. It's going to lead to destruction. And if you notice in Lord of the Rings, that's exactly what it is. The ring of power, and also the other rings. Every stage in the game in Lord of the Rings, the ring serves to destroy fellowship and social relationships. Which is why I think the title The Fellowship of the Ring is meant somewhat ironically, because the Fellowship is actually dedicated to destroying the ring. The Fellowship is opposed to the ring. So yeah. Have I thought about doing videos about Tolkien's use of old languages? It's really interesting. There are people who have already done this, and who are better at it than I am. So Tom Shippey, Beowulf. This is I've suggested it before. It's really good. and I've also recommended Signum University before if you guys want. I mean, there's also my Patreon if you guys want like private tuition in Old English or Latin or anything like this. You can get private tuition on my Patreon, and an alternative, like because this is not me being like marketing. Signum University also does courses. I believe they have a course similar to what I'm doing here. So their course is like translating Beowulf from start to finish in Old English over the course of an academic year. So you guys can do an online course in that from Signum University. That's quite a good one. Tolkien's Constructed Languages is a really good lecture by where is it? This guy, Edward Edward Vida. I think I probably butchered that name, but if you want, sometimes people say that they love how like excited and passionate I get about Beowulf and all this stuff. He is absolutely as he's like me in that regard. So there's that. And there's a few others that we have. If you look in the suggested sections of these videos, you'll get one. Here's one as well. Michael Drought. Michael Drought, by the way, is responsible for the Anglo-Saxon Aloud project, and he has created a fuck ton of. He's recorded all of the Old English poetic record in Old English. Really, really good stuff. That's about it. So my point is, in response to the question, have I thought about doing videos about Tolkien's use of old languages? I could do, and I probably will do at some point. Why not? Let's have a bit of fun. I'm just saying, like, other people have done it better than I have, so that's partly why I haven't yet. So yes. Oh, one last one actually. It's a Cracker Jackson Crawford Tolkien. There we go. Jackson Crawford has a few videos on Tolkien. This one is quite good in particular. That intro is so familiar to me because I've watched a lot of Jackson Crawford's videos because I am learning Old Norse and his channel is immensely helpful for anyone learning Old Norse. Awesome. Let's return to glossing, guys. I'm probably going to gloss for another 15 minutes and then I will collapse in exhaustion. And with Richter, I think that's accusative. Dative. I really need to learn my my case endings properly in Old English. With Richter. Yeah, dative, okay. One. Anna. Alone. Against all. How dramatic. Oh, thank you, Michael. Your enthusiasm is infectious. I appreciate that. I try, you know. I remember when I was preparing to teach this stuff, I've always, I guess, known, because as a kid I would be enthusiastic about this stuff and nobody would want to talk about it. It's part of the reason I have this channel is I have a place where I can talk about it and people can come and listen and people are actually somewhat interested and some of you guys are like remembering things I rambled on about Beowulf, which is just amazing to me. And I really appreciate people like listening or paying attention to it. But as a kid I would ramble on about this stuff and nobody would give a single solitary fuck, which is understandable. This stuff is not relevant to the vast majority of people's lives. But I love it. And so it's nice to be able to express my enthusiasm for it here on this channel and go crazy. Honestly though, also, what if my like videos on it take off in the same way as Jordan Peterson's in that, because I think part of the reason his like lectures are popular with people is they explain it in quite simple terms. If we're being honest, like and they're repetitive in some way. They sort of ramble and they repeat, so they looping in each other, and people can take things away from the lecture afterwards. They're also all available for free on YouTube, which is great. It's very like it makes things. It's democratic. Makes it available for people. It lets a group of friends listen to them and then have a conversation about it. But also he is whichever critiques I may have of him. Jordan Peterson is very enthusiastic, and I think that shows. And I remember when I was preparing to teach medieval literature, and I was talking with my friends about it, I was worried because I'd had all of these experiences in life of talking about medieval literature and nobody being interested, in particular of nobody being interested in this, in what we're doing right now. Because, I mean, honestly, if you look at even the popular YouTubers who do this, like Jackson Crawford, his videos on Old Norse language, very, very few views. Nobody gives a fuck. But videos on short things like quirky facts about Loki and Odin or something like this get more views. But then also, I think part of the reason he gets views is because he translates his things. We go to his channel, and when you see videos like this one that he has just done, Volusspor, reading that in Old Norse, a complete reading with the translation and commentary. I mean, hand on heart, I'm ripping off that formula. I'm stealing that formula, and that's what we're doing now, or we have been doing with Beowulf. And where are we at? Except like Matt said, I have more. I have more energy into it. I'm not like yet jaded in it. Don't trigger me. Yes. But the point is, like, Jackson Crawford does videos like that, Volusspor in Old Norse, where he basically does what I'm doing and acts as your tour guide to the medieval world, medieval literature, as your interpreter, as it were. And that's great. But I was worried, honestly, that nobody was interested in the original because I don't have a translation by the side for it. But like I said earlier, I think it's actually very good that I have not put a translation on the side. Even though I have my own translation of Beowulf that I prepared, like when I was first trying to teach this text for my own purposes, which if people want to, I can link to my translation of Beowulf. It's not been edited well, so there might be some spelling mistakes here and there, and it may not be phrased very well. But yeah, I think it's good that I've done this because this forces people right into an actual analysis of the words in the text and what it means, and I get to like take you guys through it. You don't get to go on. If I get excited and I want to explain something about some kenning in this sentence, you guys don't get to like know what's in this bit until I finish rambling about that. So it forces you guys to like to learn other things that I want you to learn. Goodness. Yes, it teaches people how to read Old English. I hope, at least. That was one of my fears with Beowulf, actually. Although I was going to for my weekly sessions reading Old English, which I had wanted to do for a while, I was going to do either Beowulf or some prose text. And I'm very glad that I chose Beowulf because people find it more interesting for understandable reasons. And also because it's just but my fear with Beowulf, I should say, is that it is difficult. It's very difficult. So the word order is weird. There are so many poetic things which make it difficult. But I think we are doing well given that context. Yeah, accusative. With Hrothgar, I think that's also accusative. Yeah, that's accusative. That's right. JP does want free education online. So do I, honestly. And that is why I do what I do, because I think it's important. Part of it also actually, because as some of you will know, I am active in I am active in Discord servers for historical European languages, mainly Germanic languages, such as Gothic, Old Norse, and Old English. And I get people asking me questions all the time. And particularly for Gothic, because I've done so many videos on Gothic nowadays, I can just link them the video and be like, this is how I've already answered that question. So that is good. Siebene Wolde Mil with. I need to. And also, I'm going to take that because it's annoying to me to have that go every time. Accusative, right? With each, I thought as much. With each of the men. With each of the men of the might of the Danes. Cool construction. Fearbelo. What's that word mean again? The fear bale. Oh, somebody asked about Kenny, I think it was Gander, you asked about like compound words. Look at that. Fearbelo, like fear bane. Fear bale. Oh, lovely, lovely. Fair. Is that dative? It is dative. Thingyon, to resolve, to settle. It reminds me of the Anglo-Saxon murals in churches warning the unlettered about hell. Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think this stuff as well. I mean, well, actually, you know, chances are good whoever's reading this book can read, right? Pretty dumb, pretty dumb of me to not mention that. But you know, these kind of artworks as well speak wonders. Oh yeah, okay. So this is a weird quirk of mine. But I hate all nipples, like male nipples, female nipples. It makes no difference. Like they just weird me out. This is fucking traumatic for me. Why the? Who the? Also, I mean, I think from the slightly longer hair, this is meant to be Eve. But look, got that real Chad chin going on. Fucking hell, look at that. And I think it's also the shape of the nipples are meant to communicate that this is Eve. Although, really, in my, I sort of think that medieval people interpreted the Eden story to imply that Adam and Eve were either sexless or that their biological sex differences didn't matter to them until original sin, until they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Because bear in mind, only after they eat from the tree do they cover their nakedness and become aware of their nakedness. So that's quite important. And I think that's also why. What the fuck are these? It looks like the breast is like an extension of the arm. Ew. Who the? Oh, sorry, I hate it so much. So much. But I guess we stand like androgynous Adam and Eve. Like, go you. Eh. God. Sorry, just that manuscript is amazing, except for the nipples, and the nipples terrify me. I'm also now seeing the delay because I can see on my phone that you guys are only just now seeing the nipples. So, Weinan Dorfte, Berchte Botte. Yeah, I thought that was genitive. Bercht, yeah. Tor Banan Fulmum. One of the things I also like about doing the colors like this is that it lets you see some of the poetic structures more clearly. So You know, we can see here how, if I zoom in by presenting, in this slide, we can see this thing which is very common in Old English and Latin. Is oh goodness, and bear in mind, any Old English literature is going to be hugely influenced by Latin. It's just inescapable. With, and then Juana, against each, and then mana of the men, and likewise to fulmum banan, at the hand of the killer. We can see this, a green sandwiched between two other words. We can see that very easily with the colour scheme in a way that you couldn't otherwise, maybe. Yeah, the lag is a bit weird. Lol, Vercingetorix. Love that. I love that for you. So, oh, this is one of my, just because it's, listen to this, okay, listen to this, guys. Atal aglacha echtende was, derg death shua, dugathe und jogothe, seomada und syrede, sinnichte heil mistige moras, menne kunnon whider helrunan whirthum shrivath. Whew. The terrible persecutor was hunting the dark shower of death. Like, he shows up and he shows you your death. He shows the death of the company and of the youth. He lurked and he ambushed. He held eternal night over the misty moors, or he held the misty moors in eternal night. Like, how cool is that? Men knew not whether this hell runner, this person who knew the secrets of hell with his slitherings, would slither. Oh, it's just so much fun. Like, this is like, the reason I like I said, I prefer Christ and Satan is the lyrics of Christ and Satan read like the lyrics of a black metal song, but we have passages like that in Beowulf too, and holy fuck is it fun. Like, this bit, 10 out of 10. This is metal as fuck. Seomada und Syrede. Who doesn't want to do this? Who doesn't want to learn this stuff? Goodness. I need to stop. Because you guys are all here. I'm preaching to the choir. You guys already know. But yeah. Maybe I'm saying this as like advertisement for anyone who like bumbles in and like, they're like, ooh, should I learn Beowulf? And I'm like, yes, learn Beowulf, god damn it. Nipple faux pas, absolutely. Nipples, but like that's redundant. Nipples are already faux pas. It's like completely unacceptable. So I am saving up for like a facial feminization surgery, and what's the word? And after that is like, I'm just like saving my money, like, and just for financial stuff. But then I heard of like this surgery that some people get to like remove your nipples, and I'm like, it's tempting for me. Like, fucking hell, I do not want to have nipples. Jesus, it's so weird. Unironically, that's the only reason I like. And I've got breasts now, but they're small. I don't need like support. It's sorry if this is TMI, by the way. It's like, but it's like the only reason I bought a bra is because like it sort of covers up the sort of, it stops the nipples protruding through clothing, and I don't know why somebody would wear them otherwise. Jesus, unless they had like back problems or pain, I suppose. The terrible lone walker. Look at this word, ungängier. The like one walker, the one ganger, the solitary walker. It's really cool. Oft gefremde, he often committed. And no, I should put that as an accusative. Swa, fella, fyrna. Herre hundar of harsh persecutions, of humiliations, I should say. Herðat erdode. Right. So that's going to be accusative. He occupied Herod, sinch fire sail swertum nichtum. He occupied the treasure-adorned hall in the dark nights, in the swarthy nights. He never could he approach the. Look at this word, Ganda. You were asking about compound word. This is Gifstol, literally gift seat, because it's on that seat that the Lord sits and gives out the rings. And remember that these rings as stand-in for treasure and material wealth is destructive to human relationships between people. This is a very Marxist way of reading it, that treasure and capital and wealth causes alienation. I'm going to resist that because Marxist analysis does not apply very well to a big man society, which is long before capitalism comes into being. So, I'm saying that the Marxist idea of alienation can give us some ways to think about the giving of treasure in Beowulf, but don't take this as like Beowulf is a Marxist metaphor, is what I'm saying. Just the Marxist concept of alienation can be useful. And in Beowulf, like in Lord of the Rings, the giving of rings and the existence of these treasures, they're stationary, they're sterile, they threaten human relationships. And this is it. This is the place where it's been given out. The king's seat is a giving seat, gift seat. Very interesting. Moster. And that is absolutely, in my humble opinion, where Tolkien got the idea in Lord of the Rings. Hopefully you guys are seeing that, like, a lot of stuff, the whole premise of Lord of the Rings, of a lord giving out rings to people, and these rings being coveted possessions, which ultimately lead to the downfall of society and or of relationships between companions. He just nicked it from Beowulf. Like, I don't know what else, like, you want me to say. He just lifted it from Beowulf. But nobody's going to read Beowulf and get it from the horse's mouth. And to be fair, he does a lot of the Lord of the Rings he does it amazingly, he dresses it up for a modern audience very well. So yeah, I feel like there is a crazy delay on the chat because I'm not seeing anything. And we are almost done with glossing chapter 3. We're basically preparing the slides that I am going to read from next week when we do Beowulf. That was Rack, Mitchell, Wiener, Schildinger. For the Lord of the Schildings, yeah. Wiener, Schildinger. Mores, Bregtha, of the Mind's Breakings. Wait, is Bregtha accusative? Oh, nominative plural. I think it might be. Yeah, nominative plural. Modes Bregtha. Moni, oft. That's many. Many often sat in a group at a gathering. Oh no, the powerful one. Sorry, many powerful one, and is reach a nominative plural. Moni often is that. Okay, right. Reach a to runa, a great powerful one. Rad echtedon. They pursued counsel of what were best against the terrible afflictions to do. This particular the syntax in this particular bit is extremely messy, so that's going to be fun trying to break it down for you guys next week. But that's a next week problem. That's a problem for future Felix. Future Felix, I like that. Dum, 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 dum. Shout out again to Chaucerian Myths, whose music I am using with his extremely generous permission. I'm going to post the link one more time in the chat so that you guys can check out more of his music if you want. He is very heavily inspired by Middle English literature. So he writes book music inspired by Geoffrey Chaucer's poetry, which I think is quite neat. Oh man, my computer's being shit. God damn it. I think I might have like had too many tabs open and so it's being slow and it might crash. Please don't crash. Please. I'll close some tabs now. God damn it. Closing tabs. Ah. It's not my fault that when I talk about literature I need to bring in like 1,001 different theoretical frames of analysis. Ah. Fine. I may have to just like awkwardly like restart the stream. I hope I'm still connected even. Shit. I think I may have to do that. Oh, thank God. Right, we're back. I think we are now reconnecting. Slowly but surely. Oh no. All right. You know what, guys? I may, given that my computer is being slow, unless it recovers like right now, I will. Yeah, I think I'll end stream because I don't think Beowulf is going to load. I think that because this happens on my computer sometimes when I overload it with tabs, I need to like shut it down and start it up again. So we only have a couple more slides to gloss for Beowulf anyway, and seeing the gloss is not all that important. So I'll give a chance like now quickly. Does anyone have any final questions about Beowulf or any of the things that we've talked about in this reading session? Thank you guys. I'm glad. Thank you, Michael. I'm glad you're enjoying. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. Who knows? Maybe like what's the word? A decade in the future. Because you know how like a lot of Jordan Peterson's shit. Me making the comparison just because like he does similar sort of like he has similar like long rant videos on YouTube, and they were up there for years before he became famous for lying about a hate speech law, or like misrepresenting a hate speech law. Imagine if in like 10 years down the line I'm like a professor or something, or on my way to being a professor, and these are my videos that like are back from when I was like still studying for my PhD. Crazy. Relax about the nipples thing. I don't know why. It's just like they make me uncomfortable. Goodness. Is there only one old manuscript, or have others come to light? Michael, are you referring to Beowulf? I believe there is only one manuscript of Beowulf, yes, and that is MS Cotton Vitellius A.XV, I think. Actually, I can. Well, I don't want to like go off and load up a new tab because it might make the stream really weird. Jack Tier asks, how do I get better at translation? Honestly, just do it over and over again. I could, so maybe actually I can like run through how I did it for Old English, because I had a couple of advantages going into Old English, but not too many. So like I started my PhD in Old English literature in January of 2020, and there were 3 requirements for my scholarship that I won. You had to have fluent Latin, you had to have good manuscript skills, and as you guys have seen on my other videos on my channel, I definitely have those things, and I've had them for a long time. but I didn't have Old English. I basically lied. I was like, yeah, I can read Old English during my interview. And I couldn't really. Um, so when I landed in Dublin, I was like, oh shit, I've got to do this. So the first 6 months of my PhD, I was like obsessively learning Old English. And what I did actually was that's one of the reasons I've got so many books that are like this in Old English. And actually, because, oh, I meant to say, because some of you guys are in the UK, aren't you? And I could post them to you. I'm getting rid of my books. I'm getting rid of most of my physical possessions, and many of these are books in Old English because I would get books like this. So this is the Holy Gospel in Old English. Let's open it up to the Gospel of John because that's fame. Wait, where's Luke and Marcos? Where's John? There we are, John. You guys can see that there. Hopefully you guys can see that on Fruman was that word. My point is though that I have lots of books like this where what I wanted, I didn't want a facing page translation because in my experience it stops you learning the language. If you have a translation on the other side of the page, like in this book, if you have a translation on the other side, people will just like they'll read the translation too quickly and they'll take it all in and they don't really like learn the language. Whereas with this one, if I didn't know a word in the Old English, I would be forced to get my Anglo-Saxon dictionary, which is what I have here, and I would be forced to look it up and be like, what does this word mean? And why am I getting rid of my possessions? It's because I'm moving to Dublin and I had a bad like moving out of the place I was staying in Manchester, and it's just hassle. It's more hassle than it's worth. I have many of these books. Either I've already read them and I don't need them anymore, or I can get them online now, or something like this. So I just don't want to have more physical possessions weighing me down. But if somebody is more like settled in their life and they're in their home or they're staying in one place for a good long time and they could use these books, honestly, like leave a comment and I'll get in touch with you if you want any of these books. I have a few. So I have a guide to Old French. I have another book in Old English is this one, which is this is a book of Psalms. And if you speak Latin, it's really good because I originally learned Old English by reading stuff in Old English and Latin. So I could look at the Latin and I couldn't process the Latin as quickly as modern English. It would and also because the grammar of Latin is more similar, I could see the relationship between the Latin and how the Old English was working better by reading a Latin translation than a modern English translation. So I've got a couple of books like that. If anyone wants books that are all in Old English, like leave me a comment and I'll mail them to you. Like I'm fine to give these things away to people who will actually use them. But anyway, to go back to Jack's question of how do I get better at translation, one thing is read a lot. That really helps. I started off reading simple things. So start off reading, if in Old English, maybe something like the Anglo-Saxon Charter. Sorry, not Charter. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, I would say, is really, really good and simple shit, and you can read it in Old English. It's repetitive as well. So in so and so, in this year, so and so, Feng Torricha, he came to rule, and I've got a copy of the Parker Chronicle here actually, which people can have as well if they want to. So if you want that, that's available for people. So leave a comment if you want one of these books. I'll gladly mail them to you. So what else? Yeah, translation. Jack, honestly, translate a fuck ton of things. The list of Old English poems that I have translated off the top of my head are Beowulf, like from start to finish, which took fucking ages. It took me like a month or 2 months. And I was using the electronic Beowulf. I was like going over every word and it gave me the dictionary definition. And it still took me ages. Rant over. Judith, that took even longer because I didn't have like an electronic Judith. I had to look every word up in the dictionary and it was painful. So Beowulf, Judith, the Old English Exodus, the Old English rune poem, the Seafarer, the Wanderer, the Wife's Lament. I think there's another one as well. Wolf on Airwacker. that's 8 like poems, let alone the other texts that I've translated. The Life of Saint Eugenia by Alfred of Evesham, I've translated that from Old English. Lots of stuff I translated. And for Latin, the list is even longer. Like, honestly, there's files on my Google Drive of probably like more than 100 small Latin texts where I translated them from Latin into modern English as a teenager and during undergrad. And I just kept doing that, Jack, honestly, like keep translating over and over again. Matt can attest that translating things really, really helps you learn a medieval language. So yeah, just translate a bunch of stuff. If you want to, Jack, one thing you could do, I mean, Beowulf is complicated, is the thing. I really should do Cadman's Hymn, because Cadman's Hymn is easier for beginners to translate, I think. But if you want to, Jack, have a stab at translating using these videos, one thing you could do, because these videos will be in the playlist, is you can go to the video, you can look at the you can go to the video, you can read, sorry, you can get to a point where we're going on to a new verse, pause it like I suggest in the video, and have a go at translating it on your own using the colours and all of the words are given in the vocabulary box, and have a go at translating that. And Jack, if you want to do that, if you leave in a comment your translation, I will let you know like if it's correct or not. And you can also listen to me reading my own, interpreting my translation of it afterwards, so that you can get a sense of how well you did for that. So, and this goes for anyone, not just Jack, if they want to give a go at translating Beowulf on their own, because that's why I want to do this series, is to encourage people to read Beowulf in the original, give it a go themselves. And one thing I want to drill into your guys' head is that making mistakes is great. It's a good thing. I've been making mistakes. You might have noticed I've looked at the electronic Beowulf sometimes and I went, oh, that was the accusative case. I thought it was dative, or this doesn't mean what I thought it meant, kind of thing. This is how we learn. It's really good. So yeah, do that. I would say, if you feel like it, go back through these videos. They're all in my channel under the Beowulf playlist. Maybe start with chapter 1. Pause the video before I read a verse. Have a go at translating it. Leave your translation in the comments, and I will give feedback. And like, I guess I should give one last self-promotional shout out, because I probably need to get better at self-promotional shout out. If anyone wants private lessons in Old English or Latin or Gothic, I have a Patreon where, and it's basically just a way to get tuition at tuition level rates in medieval languages. And part of my hope is that, like, eventually, over years of doing my channel, I'll build up a larger audience, and I might have enough people wanting to learn languages from me that I can teach medieval languages full time. But that's a very like wishy-washy, like unlikely dream. But who knows? Maybe one day. Regardless, and you can find a link to my Patreon on my channel. It's on the front page. So, honestly, guys, by the way, you guys have left. I actually, I don't know if, because if I put the patreon.com, I'm just worried that it'll start crashing the thing like before. But oh, there we are, just Middle English manuscripts. There you guys go. So, the 15 quid a month is like, you get like, I'll transcribe a thing for you or translate a thing for you, and you'll get an hour's tuition in a thing, which is this. And this is gonna sound, my email is, I'll write down my email as well, bellettrationdens@gmail.com. People can email me there to arrange, like, I can, send me an email if you want, and I can like arrange sending you guys books and such. There's my Patreon, and you guys can get tuition from there, or just, you can send any questions you want to my email, and I'll try my best to answer it in time. Also French reading. Normal French reading. Okay, Michael. Yeah, sure. I'll try and schedule that in. The text I'll be doing is Marie de France's L'Enval. It's a really cool text. So yeah, there's that. What else is there to do? Put the Patreon link in. I have put the Patreon link in. Oh yeah, so like, I guess another thing is because I always feel really I think it's the Christian in me. I feel bad about taking money from anything, so I feel like they need to justify with my Patreon that like it is from my understanding, it's lower than your standard market rates for Latin. Like your average hourly payment for Latin tuition is something from like 20 to £50 an hour. So I wanted to charge as little as possible with it, basically. Yeah, ignore me. This is me. I think okay, it's partly a Christian thing, and also we've just been reading a poem where gold and treasure and rings coveting those things leads to destruction of social relationships and to the destruction of the medieval society. And I don't want to, for one, to bring about the destruction of Herot just because I want an extra £5 a month on Patreon or something. So, regardless, thank you for that. One last thing, I guess, is if you aren't in a position or don't aren't so inclined to subscribe on Patreon, but you want to help me out, share around with your friends. If you have a friend who might want to learn Old English, give it a go. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I do have a PayPal. I do. Hang on, but you do not need to. I want to emphasize this shit, and I'm fairly sure that's my Patreon. Sorry, that's my PayPal. But like, you do not need to donate. Gosh, I want to like 200% emphasize like I'm doing this because I believe that Old English stuff should be free online. It will be extremely appreciated if you do, but you do not need to, okay? Oh god, okay, right. But Michael, I super appreciate that you would like. Thank you so much. Like, very much obliged. So yeah, those three things. Well, those three things really. One, share it with your friend. If you've got, you know, those annoying friends who are like, oh, I should learn Old English, and they never learn it. Link them to my channel and these streams and can learn Old English together. Because part of it is because you guys ask really interesting questions and you give me stuff to go off of. So we get more people asking more questions about Beowulf. More people are learning about Beowulf, and I'm happy about that. Number two, if you want some of my books, my Old English books, and you're learning Old English, email me and I will mail them to you. And number three, yeah, PayPal. Sorry, PayPal or Patreon. So yes, thank you guys so much. It's been an amazing stream. I'm going to go rest my voice and also have lunch. On Saturday, I'm going to be streaming politics, and on Sunday, I'm probably going to be streaming gaming with Appius again. So thank you guys so much, everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Bye, everyone.